Namaskar, I am Neil and I welcome all of you to UPSC and you. For people who are joining me for the first time, this is an About Me section of sorts. This talks about how long I have been in the cycle, what I have done prior to coming in the cycle, and finally the fact that I have gotten the interview call this year for CSE, IFOS as well as HCS. We continue on our newspaper analysis series. If you're watching this video if you're watching, this as the first video in the series, I would strongly encourage you to go to the top right section and go to the first introductory video in the series, wherein I discuss my methodology overall on how to effectively analyze newspapers. I personally do not think you need elaborate newspaper discussions, and that is my yogdan of sorts to educate the aspirant community at large. So we'll start with the Indian Express first, and we'll see what are the relevant articles and relevant pieces of news as far as prelims or mains or interview for that matter is concerned. So page number 1 doesn't have any exam relevant information. We keep coming down. And so on page number 6, the city. So this is Delhi, New Delhi edition. And since I come from New Delhi, this news about Delhi recent MCT issues become important as far as the interview is concerned. So for people who have Delhi as their place of residence, should read about the issue for interview categorically. For people who are preparing for prelims or for mains, no relevance, no exam relevance to be clear at all. Then we come down to the next page. Then politics related news are not important for the examination. What next? Okay, so on page number 11, we have this good case study which can be used in GS4 ethics. This case study can be used in GS4 ethics and it can be used in GS2 governance. And this case study is about how migrants during the COVID crisis were given this chance to become entrepreneurs. And this initiative was started by the district magistrate of West Champaran area, Mr. Kundan Kumar. And the startup zone, this Chanpatia block startup zone, is the brainchild of the DM. So you can make a note of this, can be used in GS2 governance and GS4 ethics. Then let's move forward. On editorial, so this has good enough information as far as the GS3, Indian economy section is concerned. And under Indian economy, you have to read about banking. And this is where, IBC becomes important. So IBC in general has been read by people who've been in the cycle for 4 or 5 years. Or for people who've just come in the cycle in the last year or so, must not have, unless and until you've taken foundation classes somewhere, I don't think you would have had read about IBC in detail. You don't need to read about IBC in detail either. And this article gives you enough information that can be used in a question on banking or even on IBC. This will have enough fodder content. Let's see the fodder content. So this speaks about how this intended to bring about a structural change in the resolution architecture. So that is the first keyword. So structural change in the resolution architecture. Then what next? Then it says that, but it has fallen short of certain expectations. So there are certain issues with IBC. Let's look at those issues. So those issues are related to the fact that realization of creditors have been lower than the expectations. Number one. And number two, the strict timelines prescribed in the code, they have not been adhered to. And you have this data which encapsulates these underlying issues. The data says that in cases resolved until now, only 30.8% cases of the admitted claims have been resolved, number one. And number two, about 64% of the ongoing cases have crossed the slated timeline of 270 days. So this is a good appraisal of IBC. Then let's move forward. What next? Then it says that now there are certain proposed changes, and those proposed changes talk about having a greater reliance on data with information utilities, number one. And this reliance on data can be used in multiple different contexts too. We're moving towards evidence-based policy making. We're moving towards data-driven governance. And that is where this point comes into play. But here, you don't only write that we have greater reliance on data, but you bring a sense of specificity when you say that now we're going to have greater reliance on data with information utilities, which is a specific keyword as far as the domain of insolvency and bankruptcy code is concerned. Let's move forward. What else? Then it says that we need to remove ambiguity and bring about predictability again, which is sine qua non as far as the governance or regulatory mechanism is concerned. So this point about uh, need to remove ambiguity in the governance and to bring about predictability in the regulatory regime is valid across the spectrum, whether the regulatory regime of healthcare is being talked about, whether the regulatory regime of education is talked about. This point remains the same. So this has good fodder point that can be used across the board, specifically as far as GS2 is concerned in regulatory regimes. Let's see what next. Then it says that the proposed pre-packaged insolvency that was introduced only for MSME has to be extended to other firms as well. So this is another specified keyword for IBC. Now you don't need to Google extensively what is pre-packaged insolvency unless and until you come from a commerce background. UPSC, no possibility will ask a very specific question on pre-packaged. If you go, and that is why I encourage people to go to the previous questions for both prelims and mains. They don't ask very specific questions, and if they ask very specific questions, those are obscure questions that have to be handled with your peripheral knowledge, not to be read in detail while you're sitting at home. So this is another point you can make known. Then it says that there are certain changes as far as the resolution of real estate firms are concerned. There's a certain distinction that is being made. Why is that distinction being made? How will that distinction be realized on the ground? Not my concern. I will not extensively Google unless and until it's a very big structural issue. For one, these are proposed changes. So I'll just make a note of this third point. When I say that, one of the proposed changes is to have a distinction of sorts for the resolution of real estate firms. That's it. And finally, the proposals will also have, changes the manner in which the proceeds of the resolution will be distributed. Again, how exactly will that change be executed on the ground, and or what is that change exactly? None of my concern. When you write in the examination hall, you will not have the bandwidth, you will not have the luxury of those words or of time to write in such specificity. Neither will the question be so specific, at least not in my opinion. So this had enough number of fodder points. Let's move forward. Then this has good fodder points on the need to have a gender just society. It speaks about mandating menstrual leave and then increasing the access to sanitary napkins. So in women related issues, these 2 points can be added. Then let's move forward. This is an amazing article. One of the mistakes I used to commit in my earlier attempts was to read these articles extensively. Now, these articles are read by esteemed individuals who are experts in their field. And this would definitely add value to your life and would add value to your understanding of how the national economy works, or why things happen, how they happen. But my experience tells me that they have zero exam relevance. And that is why I personally have stopped reading these articles as far as exam preparation is concerned. I might read it for out of my own interest, but this won't yield any significant improvement as far as my chances of clearing the exam is concerned. Articles like these, great article, amazing points, but very little exam relevance. Then this crisis of we have been talking about the inclusion of foreign, or the leeway that is being given to foreign university to set up campuses. This is an interview related issue. If you're preparing for CSE interview, then read about it. If you're preparing for prelims or mains, you can skip it, because the final modalities are yet to be out, and in no way can there be a standalone question in prelims or mains which would need a thorough understanding of the topic from your end. Only if you're appearing for interview do you read this well. Then so this has good amount of fodder points as far as working of MSME is concerned in GS3 in Indian economy. And so there's a focus, and there have been questions on MSMEs in the past. So there are 3 major pieces of information that would aid my cause as far as understanding about MSME construction. Says that the Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme (ECGLS) has helped MSME during COVID times. That is all. I will make note of number one. Number two, I'll say that the scheme Udium Assist platform by SIDBI aims to bring the informal micro enterprises into the formal ambit. Number two. And finally, I get this data point which says that we have around 65 million MSMEs. So this can be one of the potential introductions as far as a question on MSMEs is concerned. So 3 pieces of information, 2 schemes, and 1 data point. Then Kerala's man-animal conflict. We've seen this news since last 2-3 days. This is only relevant for people who are preparing for Indian Forest Services. And if you are preparing for it, then you should be aware of how man-animal conflict happens. Why does it happen? What are the ramifications? And what steps does government or the forest officials take so as to ensure that the conflict is taken care of? But not relevant for either mains or for prelims, not at all. And we come to the world news section, nothing relevant. And I think that is it as far as Indian Express is concerned. Let's come to the Hindu. Nothing on the initial few pages. Editorials also not relevant to the demand of the exam. So on page number 7, the opinion page, there are good keywords as far as the topic of education in general is concerned. So for one, so again, it brings to the fore the same issue that we've spoken about in the past about the fact that now foreign universities are being given this opportunity to set up campuses in India. So one keyword, beautiful keyword is internationalization of higher education, keyword number 1. Then concerns of the regulatory authority. So why did it not happen? Why was this step not taken until now? Because of the concerns of the regulatory authority, government, and foreign higher education institutions. How do you remember that? You remember it by using a stakeholder analysis. Who are the stakeholders as far as education is concerned? Government of the country in which the educational institute has to be set up, the institute that dispenses the education, then regulatory bodies. So government makes a policy, regulatory body executes that on the ground, institute dispenses the education, and then the people who are being benefited by that education. So that failed due to the concerns from all those stakeholders, and that's why it didn't come to fruition. And that is why frameworks work like a charm. Then what are the current concerns? Promoting excellence, preventing malpractices, and safeguarding the interests of students. And again, so it speaks about the safeguarding the interests of all the stakeholders and preventing malpractices. That's a common point across the forum. Whenever you speak about regulation, you need to ensure that the malpractices are prevented. You have to promote excellence, whether it is education, healthcare is another common follow point. And cultural threats, so again, comes from GS-based framework. So in GS, you have GS1, you have art and culture, history. So the point about culture can be taken from the GS-based framework. You don't need to memorize it. Then what next? So this idea of giving foreign universities the chance to set up campuses in India is also spoken about national education policy. And we need to ensure that a special dispensation has to be given regarding regulatory governance and content norms on par with autonomous institutions of India. So that is the life cycle of sorts as far as the educational institute is concerned. So what is the life cycle? You need to have regulation before it comes, then you need to have governance while it is running, and then the content while it goes to people at large. So this can be memorized using a life cycle based framework. A regulatory regime happens before it is set up, governance while it is happening, and content during the dispensation or during the actual application of what it is there for in the first place. Then finally, government has made it a point that it would stop the outflow of 28 to 30 billion in foreign exchange. Now, I'm going to make an important point here. Even though the author disputes this amount, author says that this this is not a correct figure. It is grossly inflated. But in my opinion, while you're sitting for an examination like civil services, you should stick to the data point given by the government as far as what you write in the examination hall is concerned. That is my opinion. So I'm going to stick to this figure unless uh, government comes out with a different data point. So this is one of the benefits I'm going to show in the answer about why we need introduction of foreign universities in our Indian national education landscape, because it would stop the outflow of nearly 28 to 30 billion in foreign exchange. Then again, this is another criticism as to why this idea would not potentially work, because people don't only go for studying, they also go for the experience of living abroad, post-study work visas, income opportunities, and better career prospects. And this is a concern. And finally, this is a way forward, which is relevant as far as any regulatory regime is concerned. Speaks about how we need to have an enabling framework rather than a constraining framework. So we need an enabling framework for the entry. So again, it is speaking about the life cycle. So first, the foreign university will enter the nation, then it will operate, and that is it. Framework for entry and operation of foreign higher educational institutions. That is it. So that's a good way forward. Can be used in different regulatory concerns, different regulatory regimes also. This has a couple of good order points on the basic structure of the constitution, directly listed as a subhead in GS2, basic structure. And so I have a good keyword. Recently, the current CGI has called the basic structure as the North Star, an unfailing guide which along the way, which shows the way when the path appears convoluted. So this can be my conclusion of sorts as to why the basic structure is relevant in the contemporary context. Then we say that one of the criticisms of the basic structure or the striking down of INJAC was that it was an exercise of the will of the people through parliament, and basic structure tends to override it. So this is one of the criticism of the basic structure doctrine. Basic structural doctrine. Then what else? Then finally says that the basic structure or framework of the constitution in its living spirit, holding up the body, it is the soul of the constitution. So this is again another potential rhetoric I can use towards the conclusion. So I write about how the current CGI has called it the North Star and how it is the soul of the constitution. Then we see if we have anything else left to discuss in today's newspaper analysis. And the answer to that is no. That is it. Thanks a lot for joining me in my newspaper analysis. If you have any follow-up doubts, you can either leave a comment in the comment section, or you can go to my Telegram channel or group and you can leave a query there. If you want to see more of my work, you can go to my Telegram channel. I have organized the entirety of my contributions there, and I'm certain it would add tremendous value to preparation. I think that is it. I'm going to see you in the next video in the series. Until then, take care and happy learning. Bye.